My name is Peter Mandelstam, and this is an exclusive interview for Crouching Tiger Media. I've been doing wind since 1998. I was one of the early pioneers. I was a consultant and learned what not to do, and then thought I could not make the mistakes that my clients made and set up a development company and worked originally offshore and onshore, bid a bunch of projects and successfully developed the first project in Montana. I'm very proud that today 100,000 Montanans are carbon neutral. That project went operational in 2005. I built a series of other companies, offshore companies, particularly blue water wind. I bid and won the first offshore wind contract in the U.S.
Wow.
Won a contract in Delaware for $3.9 billion to try to develop the first offshore project. And I'm continuing to look at other opportunities from Maine to the Carolinas. The problem with the wind business is the irregular government policy.
Okay.
There are entrepreneurs like me who risk our own money. We get up every day, we try to make good projects happen, but the U.S. Congress has not renewed the tax credit. It expires, comes back, expires and comes back.
What exactly is the tax credit?
Tax credit is a very modest incentive in contrast to the much larger permanent incentives that oil and gas and coal, nuclear power have. The wind industry gets a very modest incentive. It's been around since George Bush Sr. put it in place in 1992.
Okay.
The industry gets this modest incentive if we successfully go through all the difficulties of developing a project and getting it all the way to operation. Then we get a modest subsidy during the operation period. Wind has gotten this modest subsidy since 1992. We're still a younger, less established technology, and it's perfectly appropriate for us to have a modest subsidy. I'd be happy if you took all the subsidies away from all the technologies and let wind compete on a level playing field. But right now the playing field is skewed. Fossil and nuclear up here, we're down here. All we're asking for is a level playing field.
Right?
Yeah. The energy business is a long-term play. Costs a lot of money up front, and the payoff takes a couple of years. But if you're patient, it's a wonderful business with great people. So what I'd say is have a strong stomach, sleep well at night, and be willing to wait for a delayed reward. But the rewards of building a renewable energy project, the project I developed in Montana, the contract I won in Delaware, very satisfying work. And of course you get to fight climate change. And people love clean energy. Look, we all, your generation particularly, all have lots of electronic devices. We all use ever more electricity. We need clean, reliable sources of it. I don't think we can count on fossil fuels. Certainly we're going to see nuclear power plants age and close eventually. We've seen disasters around the world. And so transitioning to clean energy, wind and solar, is really the right way to go. The president has certainly committed this country to a path to fight climate change. And he can do a lot, and he has done a lot. But certain things under law have to be done by Congress. And Congress hasn't passed any meaningful energy legislation since 2005. I've been going to schools like Yale and MIT and the University of Delaware really since I started in this business in the late 90s. And what I've seen, particularly in the last 5 years, is that young people like yourself really understand renewables, really get wind energy, they really love it. And so I take a generational approach. I'm a patient man. I see that as your generation steps into leadership positions, renewables will be second nature. But today, people less than 30 really get it, and people older than 50, it's more of an argument, it's more of a struggle. And so I think generationally, your friends, your classmates understand climate change, understand the importance of renewables. And so I'm a patient man, but I'd like to see it happen as soon as possible.
So you think there's a bright future for your industry, correct?
I do. We've seen wind. The president committed the country since he came into office to double renewable energy, and he achieved that goal in his first term. So he wants us to double renewables again by 2020. And I've told this story, but it's one that I really think is important to tell again and again. I read an article that changed my life. I was doing affordable housing. I knew nothing about the environment. I'd taken no courses at school. And I read an article by a man that I had known very peripherally at college. And so I picked up the article. And I read this article. And this man wrote about being in the mountains with his dog. It was snowing. Instead of thinking what a beautiful day, the snow, the mountains, my dog. He thought, what did the power plants do in China that lofted gas and dirt up into the atmosphere, that drifted halfway across the world and snowed on me? And what he said was, and it was a very profound insight, and one that has depressed some people, but it energized me. He said, we've ended the natural. That man was Bill McKibben, become a very famous environmentalist, and it became a famous book called The End of Nature. And I changed my whole life because of Bill, because of that article. I knew nothing about it. I started to go to conferences. I taught myself solar energy. I did solar for a number of years. Taught myself wind. In those days, there were no textbooks. Really weren't any classes at any schools. I've now gone to places like Yale, MIT, lectured at Harvard, and talked to young people like yourself. And now, of course, there are degrees in renewable energy, even a degree in offshore wind.
Yeah.
It didn't exist when I was at college. So I think that young people, again, in the future, they understand that this is the way to generate energy. But for me, it was this insight of ending the natural. I was out hiking earlier in this trip, and I thought, how beautiful. I'm aware that it's not, strictly speaking, a natural environment, but an environment that we as humans have impacted.
Yeah.
What I want us to do is tread as lightly as possible on the planet, remove the worst effects of climate change, and we can do that by taking the carbon out of the air, making our energy more renewable. And that's really what I've dedicated my life to. And I get up every day loving what I'm doing. I feel very lucky to work in this field.
That's great.
Important.
Thank you.
So every day, I think I'll try to leave the world a better place. If it's my last day, I tried.
Thanks for coming by, Peter.
All right.